And these are influences in my life. Well, the book Catcher in the Rye by Holden Caulfield, where Holden had this J.D. Salinger, the main character is Holden Caulfield. Excuse me. Holden's main thing was he could not deal with phonies. He wanted everybody to be real and honest. And so we had to write a paper, compare and contrast yourself with a character in a book. So I wrote a paper doing parallels, how Holden Caulfield and myself were much the same. And the paper started off saying, I have a confession to make. My name is not Steve Copeland. It is Holden Caulfield. And then I continued from there. And I made a lot of observations about life. And after I wrote the paper, my English teacher, Miss Griffin, she called me out into the hallway. And the first thing she said was, Steve, is everything that you wrote in this paper true? And I said, yeah, every word of it. And she said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I'm going to be an accountant. Another person that's on my list is my Uncle Hi, my mother's brother. He was the person that whenever you had to write a paper in school, who's the person you most admire? It was my Uncle Hi. He was a pillar in the community. He was the founder of Temple Israel. He was the head partner of a very large CPA firm that I worked at when I first got into college. But more than that, when my mother went through divorce, and I was 7 years old, and we were poor, and we were having a hard time making ends meet, and a wash machine would break. My father was living up in the D.C. area, and we were in Norfolk, and my mother just didn't have enough money, and she would call up and ask my father, could he send some extra money? And he would tell her that, no, I already sent you alimony and child support. You should manage your budget better. This was the beginning of a very difficult relationship with my father. And so, Dad, hang in there because you know where this is going to go. But so my mother would get to a point where she would just not know what to do. She'd get hysterical sometimes. And she would finally, she didn't want to because she was embarrassed, but she would call my Uncle Hi, and he would help us out. He would buy a new washing machine, and he would do things. He was a wonderful man. And then he took me to my first baseball game when I was 8 years old, Frank D. Lawrence Stadium in Portsmouth, the Portsmouth Tides. And he taught me how to keep box score. And he said to me when I was 8 years old in the second grade, Stevie, you're going to be a great accountant someday. And I said, what's an accountant? So he told me what an accountant was, somebody that helps people manage their money and so forth. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because you have a gift with numbers. So from that moment on, career day in elementary school, what are you going to be? I had a lot of buddies that were going to be firemen and policemen and whatever. I was going to be an accountant. So I grew up wanting to be an accountant. So back to the high school teacher, Miss Griffin, took me out in the hallway. She said, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I said, I'm going to be an accountant. And she said, well, may I say something to you that I've never said to anybody else before? And I said, please. And she said, well, Steve, I've never met anyone like you, and I want to give you a piece of advice. She says, I think what you should do with your life is you should go out and live life to the fullest. Take any opportunity that comes your way, have any experience, just live life. And when you turn 40, write about it. She said, I've never met anybody like you that could do that, Steve. And that was a pretty neat thing to tell a high school kid that's out there just having a good time, you know? So that has always been in my mind. And the problem is that I'm 65, and I'm a late bloomer. I'm way, way behind what she said. But that's okay. I'm well onto it now. And one of the reasons that I'm well onto it is because I have been surrounded by people that make me a better person, that care about me, that are helping me get to the things to find my purpose in life. So Let me tell you about another person that has a great influence on my life, and that is Millie Roberts. She was my friend Bentley's mother. I grew up with Bentley, and she lived a couple doors down. And when my mother had twins when I was in high school, I was 13 years older. It was pretty noisy in the house, and I started college, and she gave me the key to the house in her room and said, Stevie, you can come over here because I want you to do well. So I really want to thank Millie. The YMCA. My uncle Sidney gave me my first membership when I was 7 years old of the YMCA. And I've been there for going on 59 years, and I've got a healthy lifestyle. That's what I got from the YMCA, and a sense of community. And Mr. Airy, I was a bookkeeper at Eastern Auto when I was first in college, and Mr. Airy was the most incredibly gifted, detailed man there is. His mind was like a trap door, and he would always get behind keeping the books there, and I would come in nights and weekends and work with him to get caught up. He paid me really well, but I want to tell you about Mr. Airy. Mr. Airy, he didn't have any friends in the world. He was a workaholic. And what I got from being around Mr. Airy was I got trained with incredible detailed cost accounting, which has carried me through my whole career. But what I really learned from Mr. Airy was what I didn't want to become, letting my job and my career and my work, how I make my money, control my life. Mr. Airy committed suicide, and that was one of the saddest things that I had ever dealt with at the time. He couldn't take it anymore, and he always had nervous breakdowns. He was so overworked that he would stress out. He'd bring me in, and I'd work till midnight on weekends. I'd come in at 7 or 8 in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays, and he never took a break. So I learned a lot about keeping your priorities straight and not going to these kind of places. Another thing that's been a great influence on my life is the martial arts. I've learned a lot of discipline, but I've learned fitness. It's funny what I want to tell you now is a lot of people that have had a great influence on my life were people that I only met like for a brief moment or for one time. And my fourth grade elementary school PE teacher, Mr. Beber, he went to Appalachian State Teachers College, and I'll just never forget. He was a phys ed teacher, and I really set my life after meeting this man wanting to be always into fitness. So I've got some good influences. Well, I want to tell you a little bit here. When I was young, I made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of things I probably shouldn't have done. And I want to thank my dad now, and I'll start talking a little bit about my dad and how he fits in. Because what I've gotten from my dad, it's taken a lifetime to really get to it. My father used to push me really hard when I was young to tell me that he wasn't going to be able to help me in college, and if I wanted to go, I better start working. And I said, well, I already have a paper route. And he goes, well, get 2. You can do that. Maybe other people don't want to do it, but you're capable. And I resented it. I resented it tremendously when he told me it was like I wasn't doing enough. Well, I do have a very powerful work ethic, and my father was instrumental in that. But one thing my father told me when he was upset with the way I was when I was just kind of doing a lot of things and not thinking about saving, he told me that you better save because someday you might be in a problem and you might not be able to have income coming in, and you better have some savings. And my father also, we were involved in coin collecting, and he always helped me with coins, and that's another whole conversation on another show when I teach assets and the importance of having something in your back pocket that you can fall back on. But so here's the story. I went cross-country with a buddy. I dropped out of college with my buddy Jack the day before my junior year. I was disillusioned and didn't want to stay in accounting, and I changed my major to elementary ed, and he came by and said, hey, you want to go? And I said, where? And he goes, Well, I'm going to California to see actually his brother was in Colorado to see my brother. Make a long story short, and we'll do more detail later. I dropped out of college. The next day I left with Jack with $50 in my pocket with a Texaco credit card and a Shell credit card that I'd gotten in the mail. All college kids get credit cards, like I was talking in the credit lesson a couple weeks ago. And my mother, she said, Stevie, I've got 4 kids, and you're the only one that gave me these great hairs. Dropping out of college and leaving the next day was a very difficult thing for my mother to have to deal with. But here's what happened. I went with Jack, and I had $50, and we went up to Montreal and cross country and did a lot of wonderful things and ended up in Colorado. Then I hitchhiked to California, and I was ready to go to Hawaii on a one-way ticket and see what happened next. Well, when I got out there, I worked in a Chinese restaurant and made $715 in 15 days and sent money back for my mother to catch up some of my bills. The TWA credit card was called the Getaway Card, and I got away. The Texaco card was called See a Miracle on Us, and I did. Well, so I charged all the gas on the credit card, ran that up, and on the trip, Jack paid for all the meals, and then when I got out to Colorado and I was all set to go to Hawaii, a gentleman at Apollo Travel Agency, he knew I was somewhat unstable, and he tried to discourage me. He offered me a job as a bookkeeper, and I was thinking about it. Well, I hitchhiked out to California, and I was walking across the street, one of those 10-lane highways where they're going to run you over. And as I stepped up onto the curb, I passed out. And I went to the hospital, and they told me that I had a very, very serious situation. I needed a surgery. I had a thing called a fistula, a tear way up in my colon. It's getting kind of personal here. I won't stay on it. But the thing was, so I hitchhiked back to Colorado to get my things back from Jack, and I used that TWA credit card to fly home. I later sent the 2 credit cards. I cut them in half, wrote letters. I paid $5 a month. I said I want to keep my credit straight. That's how I first learned, and they worked with me. And I finally paid the balance when I got on my feet. But here's what happened. I needed a surgery, and my Blue Cross Blue Shield was $33 a month with an employer that I had left my job, Jack Detreville and Sons in Richmond. And so my insurance had lapsed for 3 months. And the policy was that you can let it lapse for 2 months, but they won't let it go 3. So I called the insurance company, and I met a wonderful person on the phone, and that's what I was trying to tell you about credit. Tell your story. They're all real people. Just be open and honest. And this person said, our policy is only 2 months, but if you can come up with the premium for all 3, $99, we will restore your insurance so you can have the surgery. So I hitchhiked up to Washington to ask my dad would he loan me $100 so I could have a surgery. And my father gave me some very serious facts of life, and it caused a 20-year rift. I didn't go in his house for 20 years. He turned me down for the $99. He said that a couple years before he had lent me $500 that I hadn't paid back. So I'll never forget the conversation. I said, Dad, I think I get it. You want me to be able to not have to depend on anybody, to be able to make sure that I can always take care of things. I said, it's a pretty hard lesson the way you're teaching me, but I got it. I said, thanks, Dad. I appreciate the lesson, but I'll tell you this, I'm not going to ever come in your house again. I'll take you to 93-year-old Dad right now. I love my dad so much, and we communicate, and he's taught me forgiveness. That's the main thing I want to tell you about the lessons of life. My dad's taught me forgiveness because I've forgiven my dad. He's forgiven me, and we're very, very close. And so it's been a long time, but it's a wonderful relationship. So when I hitchhiked back from D.C. without the money to pay my insurance, my mother was very, very upset, and she called Catherine and Robert Sawyer, that were our neighbors up the street, these beautiful Christian neighbors, And they came over within 10 minutes of when I got home from being off the highway.